This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com, back from my second workout of the day. And people seem to like when I do these custom videos talking about famous wrestlers that I've worked with, both as a promoter and a wrestler. One guy, multiple time WWE and WCW world champion, Psycho Sid Vicious, has been requested by numerous fans here on the Hannibal TV. Hello, GR. Hello, Riza. So I'm going to get into Sid because I've actually used Sid a lot over the years. He was part of the very first Great North Wrestling event ever back in the summer of 2007 at TD Place Arena here in Ottawa, Canada, a venue where Sid actually wrestled many times for WWE when I was a kid watching him. And if you weren't a kid in the 90s seeing Psycho Sid live, WWE will try and write history because Flair and Arn Anderson had heat with him, and they'll try and make it like Sid wasn't popular. But if you were at events where Sid was there, he was over like crazy. He got pops similar to the Ultimate Warrior, and I would say larger than the Undertaker, from what I recall. So yeah, I had promoted numerous events. I've been promoting since like 2004-ish with Stampede Wrestling and some other shows here and there before I started Great North Wrestling in 2007. And for that first event, we had almost 4,000 fans. And Sid wrestled Johnny Devine, very professional to work with. We brought him back again a couple times the next year. I wrestled him myself the next year in 2008. And what I recall about that is the show was in Pembroke, Ontario, which is maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours from Ottawa. And we had a decent crowd. We had maybe around 500 or 600 fans for me against Sid in the main event, which isn't bad for a 10,000 person town. But what I recall is the people that drove him from Ottawa to Pembroke, because there was no airport in Pembroke, said that he had smoked like 7 grams of weed in that time. And I remember being in the ring with him that night. And I don't know, the video is on the Hannibal TV, but he was like exhausted. And I do recall that like there was a couple points where I picked him up, where I was like picking him up because he was just dead weight. He just wanted to sell and stay down because he had smoked so much and was tired, I guess. So I do recall that was kind of a funny match, but he did put me over in that match. He's always been very easy to work with. He wrestled for us again later that year against Jinder Mahal, my old buddy back. We used to be very close friends. And I remember that Jinder wanted to wrestle Sid so much that he flew himself from Calgary to, I think, either Montreal or Ottawa, because that show was in Hawkesbury, Ontario. Again, Sid was on that card. Abdullah the Butcher, I think, wrestled me on that card. And it had like 700 fans in a 10,000 person town. So I do recall that. And that match, Sid against Mahal, is on the Hannibal TV. I was supposed to use Sid in Alberta that year as well, but he didn't do the shows, but he did not request a deposit, and he did give notice. He didn't just no show. So the only 2 events that he didn't make it to were 2 Alberta events in 2008, which he did give notice before not making it. So we did. I believe we replaced him with Frankie Kazarian We offered refunds. People did take the refunds. So it was disappointing, but I don't hold anything against him because he didn't take money and not show up, and he gave us notice. I think he hurt himself or something why he didn't show up to those ones. One event I really remember using Sid-Ob was 2009 in Montreal. I won't name the company because it's a really shitty, overrated company. But I had done numerous shows with them, maybe 3 shows. This was the last one that was kind of a cross-promotional deal I had with them. But they ripped me off on this particular show. There was so many fans at the show that they actually delayed the show because they had to get more chairs from the church next door to this auditorium in Montreal, where the show was taking place. And I was wrestling this company's champion, and Sid was in a tag team match or something, also on the card, but later in the card. And when they came to me to settle up at intermission, it was clear that they were not being honest with the money that was taken at the gate. And also, one of the Great North Wrestling wrestlers on this co-branded card, Jeremy Prophet, they requested to have Job in an earlier match, even though I was funding the show, which was insulting. Then they wanted me to job to their champion. And I remember telling Sid, I'm not jobbing to their champion. I'm going to win this match. So I was the one paying the wrestlers on the card. I paid Sid. And I remember like a couple weeks later, we had another show with Sid in Thunder Bay. And I said, I'm going to leave after I beat this guy, just to avoid a big crisis. But just so you know, I'm going to win this match, Sid. So there might be some fallout. So I ended up beating this guy. They played my music. They announced me as champion. I actually hold 2 titles in Quebec, 2 Quebec championships that I've never been defeated for. So I am the true champion of Quebec to this day. But I remember Sid, who I met up with later that night, by the way, at another friend of mine's house where this friend had a lot of weed. And as I previously said, Sid is a big pot smoker. And Sid was laughing and like making fun of these little Quebec mark wrestlers walking around like chickens with their heads cut off. He said it was one of the funniest things he's ever seen in the business, all in a big panic because I had decided that I was going to win that match since they wanted to be assholes. And then, as I mentioned, a couple weeks later, he drew again in Thunder Bay for us. It was the first time we had gone to Thunder Bay. We had about 2,000 fans with Sid against Jim Duggan in the main event, and he put Jim Duggan over. Once again, Sid, always easy to deal with. We used him a bunch of other times, including his last ever match in Canada in 2017 here in Ottawa, Canada. We had over 1,000 fans. Sid was in the main event. Or Sid was actually just in a match. It was me and Wes Briscoe were in the main event for the Canadian title, and Sid just wrestled a wrestler named Paul Rosenberg, a local wrestler. We had over 1,000 fans, and that may have been his last match. I don't know, but it was definitely his last match ever in Canada. And I've done 2 shoot interviews with him. I think it's fairly obvious. You could tell that we're friends by the shoot interviews. He's funny. He's a hilarious guy. He gets a bad rap, as I said, because people were jealous of him. What his problem was in wrestling, because he had a lot of success, but he really could have been the next Hulk Hogan at one point. Watch a match from Cornwall, Ontario that I was there for. It's a TV taping. Him against the Big Bully Busick. I think it was in around 1992. And the crowd, I remember like being there, the crowd was just going ape shit for Sid. And he wrestled like 3 times on that show because it was a TV taping. But if anyone ever doubts that Sid could have been the next Hogan, if he had gone with that babyface push and stayed in a company for a long period of time, he had the talent and the look to do it, and the mic skills and the wrestling ability. He's underrated as a wrestler, in my opinion. I've wrestled him, okay? And I've wrestled him, as I said, he was high as a kite. And that match still had a good fan reaction. So I think he's underrated. He could have kept going longer. He was really mad after the leg break incident in WCW. He could have had another major run after he recovered from that, because you can look up his match, Sid against Johnny Devine, Great North Wrestling. He was still in top shape in 2007. He didn't look much different in 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. Than he did in the 90s. He kept in great shape, but for whatever reason, he didn't like Johnny Ace, didn't want to deal with Johnny Ace, and never really went for his last run. He has said in his interviews with me he would still be open to managing someone, but I just have so little faith in WWE creative. Even as a manager, it wouldn't work. And in today's corporate WWE environment, he would be more miserable than ever. So unfortunately, it wouldn't happen. I'll read some of your comments. Riza, does he regret trying to do the big boot from the turnbuckle? Yes. He was asked to do that by Johnny Ace in WCW. And another story about Sid. At one point, I wanted to have him wrestle a rematch against Scott Steiner, who I've used multiple times in Great North Wrestling. And Steiner's another one who's really a pleasure to deal with. But Sid said he doesn't want to be in the ring with Scott Steiner again because of what happened with the knee. Just brought up too many bad memories. Riley says it's a hard life being a wrestler, but he loves the business. Well, depends. I wouldn't recommend being a wrestler to too many people. Not a lot of people make big money in it. On the independent level, there's no money unless you're a past star. Sid made very good money when he wrestled for me. He always got paid very well, and I know that he sold a lot of 8x10s too. By the way, also Sid, some wrestlers will not take free pictures or sign free autographs. Sid always did. And you fans will know that go to conventions. Like a lot of times, if a fan comes up to a wrestler at an event with, let's say, a poster that he's brought from home, the wrestler will say, well, $10, $20, whatever, if you want me to autograph it. I have seen Sid sign so many free autographs. He's not a dick like some of these guys that will really milk you, and I won't name those guys. Is the man legit psycho, fart doctor? Well, he did tell me that he doesn't, and this has been for years, he only smokes weed because it mellows him out. He's not a drinker anymore because he said one of the last time he drank turned into a massive police incident. You want to see me go over Triple H? I don't know if I'm sure Triple H is going to wrestle more, but I don't think you'll ever see me fight Triple H. Ask Arn Anderson if he's psycho. I don't know, man. A lot of people say Arn Anderson's underrated. People put Arn Anderson over like crazy. I was never an Arn Anderson fan. I'll be honest, he bores the hell out of me. Some of his stories aren't bad, but Arn would never have been a star of Sid's potential if given a push, because he's just too bland. A lot of people on about me versus Triple H, which has nothing to do with this talk about Sid. I'm going to keep it about Sid. Mike wants to see Piper. She is sleeping under my feet. And this was about the master and ruler of the world, underrated, great guy. I'm proud to consider him a friend. And he is one of the wrestlers. I've said this a bunch of times. In my years as a wrestler, I was a fan as a kid. Many wrestlers have disappointed me when I've met them and dealt with them in real life. Sid didn't. He met and exceeded my expectations as a great human being. And speaking of what a great human being he is, he raises a lot of money for people and kids that are in impoverished countries. Like, he helps the needy. And if you watch my part 2 shoot interview with Sid, he even says it. If you will donate food to his church for the needy, he'll give you a free autograph. So he gives the information on the church in my part 2 interview with Sid. So I suggest you listen to that. I think the funniest part of his part 2 interview was talking about watching the Page sex tape, and people have brought up Arn Anderson. He does go over in detail the Arn Anderson incident in the part 1, which, by the way, it was Anderson that brought the scissors into the equation. And they are both lucky that neither one of them died, because they both came close to dying that night. And one of them would have probably ended up still in jail right now if one of them had died. So they're very lucky that was also before the social media era, because news was slow traveling in those days, and it could have been a lot bigger incident than it was. So have a great night. Hope that satisfies you guys about Sid.